Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us for our third Career Trajectories panel. This is Women in Academia, and I am pleased to introduce our very esteemed panel of faculty and faculty administrators. First, we have Dr. Lynne Cossman, Dean, College of Health, Community, and Policy, Dr. Audrey Lamb, Chair for the Department of Chemistry, Dr. Mariela Rodriguez, Chair for the Department of Educational Leadership and Policy Studies, and Dr. Serife, and please correct me if I pronounce your name wrong, Tekin, Associate Professor in Philosophy. So thank you all for joining us this afternoon. I'm pleased to see everybody, seeing familiar faces and meeting new faces, so I appreciate that very much. So we're going to start right off with our first question, and we'll open this to the entire panel. What inspired you to pursue a position as a faculty member? So we will start there. And if I can start with Dr. Cossman.
Sure. Thank you for having us here today, John. It's interesting. I wasn't really inspired to be a faculty member. I went to college to become an accountant. I missed getting into the B school by 1/100th of a percentage point. And I spent the summer trying to take some classes that might boost my GPA. And one of them was Intro to Sociology, and I fell in love. And when I called my father and told him I was changing my major to sociology, he was not happy. So I showed him. I went ahead and got a master's and a PhD in sociology. My area of concentration was in demography. I thought I was going to go work at the Census Bureau, but before I could graduate from Florida State, they required me to teach. And I taught a summer class in population, intro to population, and I fell in love with the classroom. So ultimately, it was my first teaching experience that led me to decide to pursue a faculty position instead of a government job.
Thank you. And Dr. Rodriguez?
Actually, my story is very similar to Lynne's. I had gone to my doctoral program at New Mexico State University with the full intention to become a school principal and superintendent, right? That was a career goal. And part of the fellowship that I was on required that I teach future teachers early in the morning. And just like Lynne, I fell in love with it. And I said, this is it. This is what I'm doing for the rest of my life.
That's wonderful. Dr. Lamb?
So I started my undergraduate thinking I was going to be pre-med, and I took one semester of chemistry, and I was hooked on chemistry. I started off thinking I would be more biology, but I became a chemist. And then I went to a small liberal arts school where I ended up kind of being the head lab tech, and then also running the review sessions and labs for the non-majors. And I quickly figured out that I loved the classroom and teaching. And so when I went to get my PhD, I thought I would go back to a school like Furman, where I was an undergrad. And as I worked my way through my PhD and my doctorate, I realized that while I love teaching, my first love was research. And so I ended up on a track for an R1 institution.
And here you are. And Dr. Tekin.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for having us here. This is very exciting. My story is actually kind of similar. When I was I'm originally from Turkey, and I loved nothing but math when I was in high school, but I was also an avid reader. I would just read everything, and I read a lot of philosophy when I was in high school, but that wasn't even a question. I entered into an economics department at one of Turkey's top universities for economics, and I was really into econometrics and math. And then I'm like, I still love reading. Why don't I do a minor in philosophy? And that was it. As I kind of progressed in my minor, I found myself being more attracted to the world of ideas than actually to the world of numbers. And in the last year of college, I had this like soul searching moment with like, okay, what do I do with myself? And I imagined myself where I would like to see myself in 10 years. And there was only one place that I wanted to see. I wanted to be in an office with books, surrounded by books, and kind of talking to my students. So that's what made me pursue a career in philosophy and then eventually be a professor.
Wonderful. Thank you all for sharing. So we're going to go a little bit slightly different direction. What is your advice for females entering the field of academia, either in an administrative, since you all are both administrative and faculty, in either an administrative or faculty role, and what words of wisdom can you offer? And we'll start with Dr. Rodriguez.
Thanks, everyone. I would say that you want to be purposeful in the activities that you say yes to, right? Normally, it's a sense of, oh, well, that sounds interesting. That sounds interesting. And yes, there are many interesting things that we can agree to be part of. But I encourage you to create a path for yourself, right? You have a trajectory, you know what type of career you're thinking of seeking. And so align all of your yeses towards those, because then these examples and these activities and these opportunities can not only help build your skill set, but are able then to connect you with persons who can assist you down that yellow brick road that you've decided upon. So, in addition then to being purposeful, you've got to be able to also pace yourself with the yeses, right? And so again, looking at what can assist me with skill building and what can assist me towards my future trajectory.
Thank you. Dr. Cossman.
I couldn't agree more with Dr. Rodriguez. I think women especially have a hard time saying no, and it's important to do that. Sometimes no is the proper answer, and so that's a very good piece of advice for somebody entering academia. Sorry, Zoom is telling me that it's going to kick me out. Oh, tomorrow. Good. I think I would say for women in academia, and maybe in any field, but I've only ever been in academia, it's important to think creatively. So about how you can be purposeful in the choices that you're making in your career. So it's not somebody wants you to serve on the parking committee. And so you need to think about what does the parking committee have to do with who I am, what I do, and what I'm trying to accomplish. So, for example, one of the biggest things I did in the past year was I co-chaired the Public Health Task Force. I actually put my hand up for that assignment because I was brand new as a dean here of a college for health, community, and policy designed to improve the health of not just road runners, but Texans and Americans and global citizens. And so at a time of a pandemic, I thought not only is my voice important here, but I need to get to know the players who also think their voice is important here. And it's not always the case that the parking committee isn't going to be the place for you. It may have something to do with what you work on. Maybe you're in urban and regional planning, and then the parking committee is a great thing for you to say yes to. So, but I think, think creatively about what you should be, the purposefulness that Dr. Rodriguez mentioned. I also think that it's very helpful to approach your work with a how can this be done instead of a why it can't be done. So I tend to be a very optimistic person. And so that thinking creatively can really help you get things done that you might think otherwise cannot be done.
Thank you. Dr. Tekin?
Yes, I wholeheartedly agree both with Dr. Cossman and Dr. Rodriguez has said, and kind of to add to those, I think one of the most important things that make us like be academics or do what we do is actually our love for it. Like at the end of the day, like, find actually those things that are really, really that you truly love and that you are uniquely kind of situated to do something with that thing, right? So this might be kind of focus of identifying your own strengths and also weaknesses and honing in on those strengths and combining those strengths with whatever it is that you're tasked to do. I really love writing, for instance. And when there's a research collaboration or I'm engaging with a group of people, I volunteer to like write the first draft or to put, all the discussions and so on paper so that we have a place to start with. So I think it's very, very important. And like, then you are also making a very unique contribution. And the second thing is, find role models and mentors in your trajectory. And they don't have to do all the things for you, but seek maybe different mentors or different role models for different kinds of things. So, make sure that you have a group of friends and colleagues who will read drafts of your work, and make sure you have like someone to go to when you're trying to, I don't know, get out of, say, a commitment, or when you're trying to say no to something, a situation that is maybe a little bit more sensitive. So it's very, very important, especially, as you progress, you will be tapped as a faculty member for administrative roles as well. And one thing that I'm trying to balance as I'm transitioning into like more administrative roles is, okay, so how do I divide my time, and how does this work? Like, because it can be very different from the world of research, and kind of seeking mentors and allies in all of these contexts, so that I can kind of arrive at a better version of myself without really losing the things that truly excite me, or the things that truly make me good at what I do.
Thank you. And Dr. Tekin, part of your answer, you talked about mentoring and strategies like that. So we're going to jump to the next question that aligns with that. If you have strategies to empower women and help female colleagues excel, what would those strategies be? So we're going to actually jump down to we're going to start with Dr. Lamb, actually.
So I actually find that question to be a hard one. I will say that one of the things that has been very important to my career has not only been my mentors, but also my support group. And so when I started as assistant professor, I met two other women who were also starting as assistant professors. And even though we got tenure many years ago now, so I've known them both for nearly 20 years, I still have lunch with each of them every week, even though one's in Kansas and one's in Michigan. We very intentionally, sometimes we call it tea if it's late in the day, whatever. Once a week, we meet for an hour on Zoom and talk about the challenges we're facing and our celebrate our successes. And this can be both in the academy, what we're doing with our work, but also with our families. We had babies together, we went through tenure together, but having that support group is very empowering for me. So I would recommend a support team.
And Dr. Rodriguez, not to lead into your answer, but I know that you are, and I'm not sure if any of the rest of our panel are, but I know you're a member of WPASA, which does kind of link also to this question.
Yes, definitely. Well, obviously, UTSA's program for, women in the academy to empower each other, that's comprised of both faculty members and staff members at UTSA. Yeah, and so just finding a way that not only are these like-minded individuals who create the supportive network, like Dr. Lamb was talking about, but that these are individuals who you can trust and lean on. Because I think that's one thing to remember also, is who you trust, right? Because sometimes we learn the hard way that, oh, something I thought was in confidence or something I shared about being vulnerable got shared with someone else. And so therefore, understanding who your allies are, knowing who you can reach out to and be vulnerable in front of, and just looking at the ways in which these supportive networks don't just have to be within your own institution, right? As Dr. Lamb mentioned, she has colleagues elsewhere, but also they can be outside your field. So just kind of the way that I said that your yeses to committees should be purposeful. So should be your connections, right? Could these be connections in a part of the country that you might want to work in the future? Might these individuals then be part of an organization that you'd like to be a board member of in the future? And so being able then to connect with these individuals in these interpersonal networks that will help for professional growth.
Thank you. And Dr. Cossman?
Sure. I think, kind of pulling all of that together. I read a mentoring book one time that said you shouldn't have a mentor, you should have a board of directors, just like corporations do. And so if you think about your board of directors, you might want a teaching mentor, you might want a research mentor, you might want a service mentor who's going to help you say no. You might want a mentor in your department. You might want a mentor who's out of your department but in your institution, and others who are outside your institution because you want to talk to them about more confidential things, right? You want to be able to, you don't want to say ugly things about your institution to people in your institution. You want to be able to do that where it's not going to get back, right? And you might need to vent. So you need different mentors for different things. But I think the other really important thing to remember is that we need to be those mentors for as many women as we can. So we also need to make sure that people see us as being available to them to ask for help and ask for advice. And so don't just arrange who your mentors are, but also think about who you can offer your mentoring services to.
Perfect. And Dr. Tekin, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, just quickly, I think in like when we think about mentorship, it's just to add to what Lynn was saying, to think about like mentoring as a cross-generational mixed thing. Like somebody, you can be a mentor to someone who's mentoring you, right? In fact, this is kind of a, an ideal world of shared division of labor where you might be able to support one person in one way because that's your strength, and that the same person can support you in other ways. So I think in that sense, it's very, very important to be open to that. As a graduate student, you might be supporting your faculty member or mentor in ways that you can't even imagine. So I think it's having an open mind in that sense would be really, really important. You have something to offer, even if you don't always feel like you do.
Thank you. So the next question doesn't necessarily align totally with the topic of women in higher ed, but it is pertinent to those students that are looking to possibly take a faculty position or transition from being a graduate student or a doctoral student to being a faculty member. And this question comes up a lot, and a lot of us feel it, but we don't ever put words to it. The question I have is, have you ever felt imposter syndrome? And if so, how did you navigate your way through it? And we'll start with Dr. Lamb.
In the last 24 hours, yes. So imposter syndrome, and actually I lead a careers book club for the graduate students and postdocs in chemistry, and we discussed imposter syndrome just last week. And I tell them, it doesn't go away the older you get, and the more you do, it morphs a little. What you feel an imposter about doesn't change. Sometimes it can be empowering. Sometimes you can say, okay, I don't know this right now, I'm going to go study and learn and figure it out. And then, but that's a minor subset of the moments when you have imposter syndrome. And I tell them, sometimes you just need to remember that there were a lot of people out there that believed in you, that got you to this point, and we still believe in you, and we feel like we can help you. You may need to go talk to a mentor or a friend or vent or find your support group and get past this moment. There are also moments when it's pretty crippling. And in those moments, there should be no shame in getting help from a professional to help people, to help you or your friends, whoever's experiencing it in that crippling fashion, get past this moment, because it is something that happens to all of us.
Dr. Cossman.
I think if someone tells you they've never felt imposter syndrome, they're not being honest with you. I think everybody feels it. Some people feel it daily, some feel it weekly, some feel it monthly or annually. Everybody's going to feel it at a different pace probably. And as Dr. Lamb said everybody's going to feel it about different things. But everyone feels imposter syndrome. How do you get past it? I think you lean on that board of directors that we're talking about, right? It's your mentors and your friends ought to be able to help reinforce things for you. But as my sister used to say, what you don't want to do is swirl up in your head and make things bigger than they actually are. You want to try to remain grounded and realize that most of the time people are feeling imposter syndrome. It's not rational. So you need, if you can't get to that headspace yourself, that's what you need your mentors to help you with getting into that headspace. You know, I'm a dean of the largest college at an R1 institution in one of the largest states, if not the largest state, next to largest state in the nation. And I still suffer from imposter syndrome. Everybody does. And it's just to different levels and with different frequencies, and you lean on your network to help you get through it, in my opinion.
And Dr. Rodriguez.
I would suggest that, always stay true to yourself and to your strengths, right? And capitalize on those. And the ways that something you fear is a learning experience, right? And will you fail? Will you make a mistake? Absolutely. Don't think any of us here haven't. And, it's just something to learn from, for next time, and something to make a note about, and something to grow yourself in. But be true to yourself and your strengths. You know that you come into these situations to not only participate and to engage and to share your knowledge and expertise, but also to learn. And so don't be afraid of making mistakes.
And Dr. Tekin.
Yes, absolutely. I think usually my default state is they're gonna find out any minute now that I'm fake, right? It's gonna happen any minute. Did not happen. I built this entire CV, but now this is the moment that I'm gonna be discovered as a fraud. That's a given thing, and I think a lot of us experience this. So my field is in philosophy, and the numbers, the optics are really, really poor. It's 2022 now. In North America, only 18 to 19% of full-time faculty members are women in philosophy. It's a heavily male-dominated field. And I don't think it's a coincidence. There are multiple reasons and multiple explanations for this. But when you look at historically, in comparison to other disciplines like psychology or sociology, philosophy really, really had fallen behind. There's women are in the minority. So I think in an environment like that, your kind of natural default imposter syndrome self also finds very easy opportunities to really feel convinced that they're a fraud. You face criticism, you face challenges, you face sometimes outright hostility, stuff happens, right? Not everybody is a good morally acting agent in the world. So things will happen. People will, there will be things that you will be discouraged. And I think in those moments, your imposter syndrome tends to get really, really worse. What do you do in those moments? Lean onto your strengths, work your way through it, literally work through it. Because at the end of the day, what's going to one of my mentors used to say, don't get mad, get even. What will make you get to that place or an even equal space is your work, the quality of your work, your dedication. So just try to think about that and think about all because this is a women in academia panel, I'm just going to cite women and think about all the women before you that had to be trailblazers and try to find inspiration in that. And when you face criticism or challenges, or when you make mistakes, as Dr. Rodriguez said, you're going to be fine. All these women have made mistakes in the past, and look at it now, and we're in a much better place than we used to be. So work your way through it and seek support whenever you feel like you need support, and people will be happy to support that because we've all been there.
Thank you. So In your opinion, how can we all play a role in creating an equitable academic environment? And we'll start with Dr. Lamb.
So chemistry is another one of those fields that is pretty lacking in women. It's male dominated, to the point where when they hired me to be chair of the department, I added the first, not the first woman the department ever had, but there were no women when I joined. And then we now have 2, which means we're up to 11%. So we have a long way to go. And part of that, there are still aspects of how we do things in the academy that lead to systemic bias that we need to figure out how to get around. One example is how you get a good postdoc is who you know or who your boss knows, because a lot of times the good postdocs aren't advertised. They, your boss writes and says, hey, I have this great graduate student who's getting ready to graduate, to the person that you might be interested, or you write and say, I work for so-and-so, I'd be interested in coming to work for you. And it can be somewhat exclusionary if your boss doesn't know, right? You understand what I'm saying? So how do we get past things? We need to make sure that we are always working to break down the systemic biases that are there. And that's not an easy thing to do, because sometimes they're not even really obvious when they creep in. So I actually think it is a hard thing to do. And I think we need to be purposeful in making sure that we are adding women and people of color to our ranks all the time.
Thank you, Dr. Rodriguez.
Yes, couldn't agree more, especially with those areas, to bring other women on. And so part of that then is to also keep women here, right, within the positions that we recruit them to. So I think it's important for all departments to take a look at the service load for women faculty, which does primarily tend to be more, just, I don't know, either we're more approachable or more giving, I don't know. But just the ways that, again, the saying yes, right, to everything. So just being careful about where the service aspect goes, because, obviously within academia, if we lean more towards service, well, then our research could suffer or our teaching could suffer. And then we really want all 3 areas, right, to be excelled in all 3 areas. And so it's looking at the ways in which the system itself needs to look at the inordinate amount of service for women faculty, especially incoming women faculty, and then also giving the credit for that service when it comes to tenure decisions, because many times the focus is solely on research.
And Dr. Tekin.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I agree with Dr. Lamb that there are systematic problems, and the lower you are in the kind of academic hierarchy, the little power you have to do anything in terms of like in changing that systematic, generating that systematic change. And I think for that reason, there's a big and important role on the administrators to kind of be aware of these kinds of imbalances and strategically promote, elevate, recognize the work that women do, whether it's in research or service and so on and so forth. But if you're starting off, if you're a junior faculty who doesn't have tenure yet and so on, like, do you just sit around and wait for the systemic change to occur? No, you don't. I think there are ways in which we can advocate for ourselves or advocate for our female colleagues. That doesn't have to be the kind of slogan of like the angry feminist or whatever, but rather kind of just sending a quick note to someone when you see that they're, they've done like great work, or, thanking for their service, and kind of doing these like small things to elevate them. But also I think the other important thing is, I think this comes with like seeing and knowing your strengths and recognizing your value, and just kind of not being shy to put yourself out there and, kind of get people's like attention and recognition. If you think that, if maybe you are part of a panel or you're doing this publication, maybe you're mentoring someone, like, don't be afraid to kind of talk about those things, not in terms of like as if you're promoting yourself, but as a way to say, hey, like, there's this really cool network of things that are happening and where people are providing feedback and support, and kind of leading by example and making people think about that. Like, I tend to like the lack of women in philosophy is a frequently visited subject matter in various institutional contexts, and I make sure that some of my colleagues know about this or read about this, and they're aware of the situation, and like, so that we actually have female candidates being brought to job interviews, and which, believe me, doesn't always happen. So I think there are ways in which we can kind of all do something to elevate the status of women in academia, regardless of how junior we might be.
Thank you. And Dr. Cossman.
I absolutely agree. And I guess the point that I would really want to make is that it's not just women lifting women up. It's all of our responsibility. We're doing some pretty heavy diversity, equity, and inclusion work in HCAP right now. And we had somebody come in to train us, and he was emphatic that we are all leaders in diversity, equity, and inclusion. We all have to be in this together. And I would like to think that women have come a long way in academia and in the United States, and I suppose in many ways we have, but it's just stunning to me. I opened up the Chronicle of Higher Education this morning, and a president just resigned, I think in January, and it's because he was harassing a woman who was his subordinate. And that's like the third president in the last year, male president harassing a young woman. And we have to have safe spaces for those women to come to their colleagues and be able to speak out.
Thank you. I'm going to close up my part of this with one last question, and it's for each of you. If there was one thing that you would hope that the women and students in this audience today take away, whether it be from our conversation or from the general topic, women in academia, what would it be? And we'll start with Dr. Rodriguez.
Yes, so, my piece of advice I want to leave you with is to trust in your worth and never compare yourself to others for validation, right? That's not necessary. You are more than enough. And so looking at the ways in which you focus on what you're worth and the value that you bring to each situation, that's my piece of advice.
Thank you. Dr. Lamb?
My piece of advice is to make sure you have found the mentors and the support group that you need to be successful every day.
Thank you. Dr. Cossman?
In addition to those two amazing pieces of advice, I would say be creative, be positive, and make your position in academia what you need it to be.
Mm-hmm.
Dr. Tekin, sorry.
Yeah, no, that's okay. I think similarly along these lines, like, learn to actually turn lemons into lemonade. It's very hard to say, especially if you are really discouraged and you don't really feel like your values being recognized and so on and so forth. Don't just think about, okay, what can I do? What can I learn from this negative experience? I think building resilience is one of the most important things, because let's face it, the road is not going to be like all smooth sailing. Everybody's waiting for you to be successful. It will be full of bumps, but it's also full of great things. There are amazing people who have been, when I look at my career, there have been amazing people who really helped me and supported me in my lowest moments. And there is a lot of hope. So you just have to kind of get through it and be positive and stay creative and take negative experience as just a learning experience and move on. If you get bogged down with negativity, you will never be able to progress. Just kind of learn to suffer, feel it, and cry, and then get up next morning and get back to work.
Thank you.